Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today we are finally going to watch the final part of Napoleon in Italy from Epic History TV. This is Battle of Rivoli. I saw though on YouTube, my homepage, that Epic History has done a new video which is about the Battle of the Pyramids in Egypt. And I believe that battle, or part of it, was depicted in the movie Napoleon, which I didn't watch. But I might do a video later on that, right? Alright, this is going to be exciting. Battle of Rivoli. Napoleon might be outnumbered here and defeated finally, right? And Mantua be lifted from its siege. Alright, original videos down below. Let's go.
An Epic History TV BMF Productions collaboration.
Alright, part 5.
January 1797. A new year, but familiar problems for 27-year-old General Bonaparte.
Let's just think now. It hasn't even gone a year since Napoleon has gone into Italy and sort of steamrolled the Austrians, losing but then winning, right? Going down to the Pope, right? Making deals with the kingdom of, what is it, Sicily, right? Not even a year.
Waging war against the Austrians in northern Italy.
Yep.
He has the great fortress city of Mantua under siege.
Yep.
And after a narrow victory at Arcole, he's once again driven back the Austrian armies, trying to march to its aid. But the French army of Italy is in a ragged state.
Yeah, that's true.
Troops have not been paid for weeks. Their uniforms are disintegrating.
Yep.
Their shoes are broken. And above all, they're hungry.
Yeah, that's true.
One of Napoleon's major concerns is the wretched state of medical care for his
Yep.
men. The hospitals lack everything. Our wounded are lying on the floors.
Wow.
And in the most horrible state of destitution.
I mean, yeah, because hospitals are very important, not only to treat the wounded, but it's a morale boost. Meaning, if you see that your fellow soldier, as yourself a soldier, see your wounded fellow soldier lying on the floor, wounded, instead of being taken care of in a hospital, then you might not in battle fight as hard, because you would think, what would happen to me? Are they going to take care of me when I'm wounded? Right? This is a problem Napoleon has to fix.
It's not just a question of saving lives.
Yep.
Getting wounded men back to their units. Medical care affects morale.
Yep.
As troops going into combat want to know that if the worst happens, they'll be looked after.
Like I said. Exactly.
Conditions are much worse for the Austrian garrison of Mantua.
Oh yeah.
Commanded by Field Marshal Wurmser.
I mean, starvation, sickness, disease.
In 4 months of siege,
4 months.
9,000 soldiers have died from disease, wounds, or the effects of malnutrition.
Wow. Look at that.
Survivors live off horse meat.
Rats.
Civilians off rats and dogs.
Yep.
Even these miserable rations will run out by the 27th of January, just a few weeks away.
He has to
The clock
surrender.
is ticking.
Yep.
The Austrians must relieve Mantua by that date, or lose the city. And with it, the war in Italy.
Yep. The enemy is withdrawing his troops from the Rhine to send them to Italy. Do the same. Help us. We're only asking for more men. That's true. Fair enough.
Napoleon, having received just 7,000 reinforcements, prepares to meet Alvinci's advance. He will not only be outnumbered, he doesn't know where his enemy will strike.
That's true.
And Napoleon must hold one division back to cover Wormser's garrison.
Yep.
It's commanded once more by General Serrurier, recovered from his long illness.
Okay. One thing though, those numbers on a siege for the French is very bad. Usually on a siege you want double the men, right? On a siege, maybe triple, right? So the French only having like 400 men more. Sure, that's containing the siege, but they can easily break out. But of course, they have been there for 4 months, and 1/3 of them are fit for service, and 1/3 of them died.
Augereau's division watches the Adige,
Yep.
while Massena guards Verona.
Sure, he's probably
The
reinforcement.
Northern Division has a new commander. Napoleon has sacked
Okay.
Vaubois for his poor performance and put in his place General Barthélemy Joubert.
Ah, okay.
He is a hard-working, brave, and exceptionally modest commander.
Like
And
Napoleon?
just 27 years old.
Right. He has a lot of young generals.
Ray is in reserve south of Lake Garda.
Okay. For me to just seeing on the map, Napoleon is focusing a lot on the northern flank because he has, right? Doesn't it look like that? He has a lot more troops on the northern flank than on the eastern flank.
General Alvinci has received 14,000 reinforcements.
Wow.
And orders to relieve Mantua as soon as possible. He is eager to march, but heavy snow and the late arrival of equipment and supplies delays his advance until the 7th of January.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The
Uh-oh.
first columns on the move are Provera and Berlich,
Okay.
but their offensive is merely a diversion intended to draw Napoleon's attention away from the main threat.
That
which
makes
will be
sense.
coming down the Adige Valley.
Okay.
Vinci has divided this force into 6 columns.
One thing though, even before it has started, his choice, Alvinci's choice of going through the mountains, and Alvinci having more men than the French here, is bad for Alvinci because less men could hold a position between mountains against a larger force. Right? Okay.
Their mission is to envelop and destroy Joubert's division at Rivoli and clear the path to Mantua.
Sure. Davidovich
But
almost
Rivoli
did
is a
that.
strong defensive position.
Yeah.
They must hit it hard and fast before the French can respond.
Okay.
Napoleon, assuming any Austrian advance is still weeks away, has travelled to the Papal States. A
Uh-oh.
column of troops commanded by Colonel Lannes.
To get
They
money,
intend
probably.
to put a little pressure on the Pope,
Yeah.
who continues to stir opposition to France.
Okay.
However, as soon as he receives reports of enemy movement, Napoleon races back to his headquarters at Rovabella.
Typical Napoleon. Okay.
By now, Alvinci's forces have also begun to advance, but serious planning failures quickly emerge.
One thing though, what Napoleon has to do here is he has to think. He can't just act on the first report that comes in and say, we have to do that. Although that is something Napoleon usually does because he's decisive. Right? Napoleon has to think carefully here.
Lusignan's first column on the right.
Although, you can argue that the French could still hold a position here in the north, right? And even if Napoleon sends a little bit more forces to the east, he could maybe defeat them and then go up north. Although that might be too late.
Flank
Right?
of the
Almost like
advance
Arculay.
has orders to cross the slopes of Monte Baldo
Wow.
and attack Joubert from the rear.
You're gonna march an army on the slopes of mountains. I mean, it took Alvinci a longer time to march here because of weather, and that was maybe not on flat ground, but that was at least on like roads, sort of next to rivers and whatnot. On the side of a mountain. That's gonna take a long time. Look at that.
It's soon clear that these orders are wildly optimistic.
Yeah.
Dreamed up by staff officers who'd not seen the terrain.
Yep. Look at that.
The peak of Monte Baldo is more than 7,000 feet high. Its
Right.
slopes are covered in deep snow and ice. The paths are treacherous, even more so after dark, and there is no firewood for making camp.
Exactly. I mean, oh yeah, I can see the forest there, right? But okay, you go there and then you need to go back up the mountain with the firewood. They could probably do this, but it's gonna take a lot longer than Alvinci
Only by
is
taking a
thinking.
wide detour can Lusignan make any progress at all,
Right.
whilst losing 200 men to exhaustion and exposure.
Wow.
Meanwhile, the 2nd and 3rd Austrian columns reach the French outpost at Ferrara. An initial attack is repulsed, and following their orders, they wait for Lusignan's column to appear before launching a second attack.
But he's too slow.
However, Lusignan's column is not yet in sight.
And again, it's not his fault though. I mean, sure, he could maybe do things more efficient and whatnot, but the fact of the matter that he can't march that quickly on a slope of a mountain. Yeah.
Alvinci's plan relies on swift, bold action.
Like
But
Napoleon.
just 48 hours in, it's falling apart.
Right. I cannot think it was prudent to adopt a plan which, at this season, a fall of snow might render totally impractical. The British Observer, okay.
At Roverbella, Napoleon ponders the incoming reports.
Yep.
He knows that Joubert's forward outpost is under attack at Ferrara, that Massena has repulsed an Austrian attack on Verona,
Yep.
and Augereau faces a sizable Austrian force near Legnago, poised to cross the Adige.
Which one would he choose? He has probably two choices. Right? At Verona, probably not. Right? Probably not. So at Legnago and at Ferrara. Which one do you choose? He sort of attacked near Legnago. So maybe it is Ferrara, right? Tough decision. This has to go down to his lower commanders, right? Augereau, Joubert, right? Massena. To give him accurate information.
Is Alvinci using the same tactics as before,
Right.
making his attack from the east? Then, a second report arrives from Joubert.
Like I said, yep.
His scouts have detected an enemy column marching around his flank.
Uh-oh.
He has no doubt that he faces a major Austrian attack and has begun withdrawing his forces to Rivoli. The report I have given you is exact, he tells his chief. Be assured, the enemy will make every effort to throw me onto the blockade of Mantua.
Wow. Very decisive, like Napoleon.
The enemy's plan has been unmasked, Napoleon announces,
Wow.
and issues a flurry of orders.
Typical
Massena
Napoleon.
is to march immediately to reinforce Joubert. Augereau is to send him cavalry and guns, while
Makes
the rest
sense.
of his division keeps watch on Provera. Ray is to move up to Castelnuovo. Servourier is to be on high alert for an attempted breakout by the Mantua garrison,
All this makes sense.
while Joubert, the youngest and least experienced of Napoleon's divisional commanders, is instructed to hold Rivoli at any cost, and assured that help is on the way.
Wow. My friends, Bonaparte demands a last effort from you to annihilate the remains of the Austrian army, who have dared to come again and measure themselves against the Republicans. Wow. What a proclamation.
After giving the Austrians a bloody nose at Ferrara, Joubert has extricated his troops overnight and taken up a defensive position around Rivoli.
I mean, look at that. That's pretty good defensive position, right? And he has, by the Agide River, by Canale, he has a sort of corridor, right? Which he can have less men protecting against a larger force, right? And he has some heights in front of him as well. Okay.
Napoleon arrives around midnight and immediately sets out with Joubert to inspect the enemy's positions. The weather had cleared and the moonlight was superb. I climbed the different heights and observed the lines of enemy fires. They filled the country between the Adige and Lake Garda, and the atmosphere was ablaze with them. One could easily distinguish 5 camps,
Okay.
each composed of a column.
That's good to know.
Until reinforcements arrive, Napoleon has just Joubert's division. 10,000
I mean, they look outnumbered, almost encircled. But okay.
men to hold off 24,000 Austrians.
Wow.
But Alvinci will help to even the odds
Okay.
by ordering Lusignan's first column to attempt a wide outflanking march to
Okay.
cut off the French line of retreat.
That could make sense,
And
yeah.
Napoleon decides the main road to Rivoli, which passes through a steep defile known as the Pontari,
Yeah.
can be held by a single regiment supported by entrenched cannon.
That's true.
This leaves more manageable odds,
Like I said.
of 9,000 against 12,000 in the center. But Napoleon wants to push out his defensive line to hold the slopes that mark the edge of the Rivoli plateau.
I mean, that makes sense. It's the same position, but more spread out and on a height, which you can fire your guns, your cannon, down and do some damage, right? And it's difficult for Alvinci's guns to shoot upwards to get those guns.
At 4 a.m., General Vial's light infantry brigade advances through the darkness. They drive back the Austrian outposts and take the San Marco chapel.
Okay.
They're followed on their left by the rest of Joubert's division.
Okay, looks like going great.
But the French push too far.
Ah.
Skirmishes break out along the line
Uh-oh.
with heavy fighting on the heights of San Marco.
I mean, one reason why that would happen is that think of yourself being there, one of the soldiers. You have this mass push of infantry pushing away another smaller force of infantry, and you say, oh my, look at this. And you keep going and going and going. You have no restraint because you think we have this momentum and we're never gonna lose it until you face a bigger opposition.
Napoleon had not wanted to start the battle so early,
Yep.
but the combat escalates. At dawn,
As it usually
the Austrians
does.
attack the plateau in force. The French 85th Demi Brigade is outflanked and routed by
Wow.
Nittay's second column.
Yep. Napoleon is outflanked.
The 29th Light, on its right, is forced to retreat, and it looks like the French line is crumbling.
Yeah, it does.
But the 14th, on their right, fights tenaciously.
Wow.
It's an intense infantry battle across broken ground,
Yep.
vineyards and walled gardens, with sudden charges, hurried withdrawals, and counter-charges.
Imagine being there. Look
When
at
the
this.
Austrians overrun a French battery, an officer demands, 14th, will you let them take your guns?
Wow.
His troops mount a ferocious charge that
Wow.
routs the Austrians and reclaims the battery.
Amazing.
By 9 a.m., Massena's troops have begun to arrive.
Okay. I mean, for now, it looks like Napoleon was sort of almost outnumbered or outflanked. Massena came there to help his left flank, but look at his right flank. On the Pontare there, right? on the Adige River, right? I mean, if they can cross the river there, yeah, he's surrounded.
They take up position on Joubert's left. The buckled French line is stabilized.
Yep.
But so far, the French have only faced half of Alvinci's 6 columns.
Yep.
One by one, the others now join the action. Vukasovic's 6th column is on the far side of the Adige River.
That's a classic Napoleon move, concentrating his cannon on a single target, and this is pretty easy. Look at this. And again, cannon fire isn't usually at this time used to get a lot of casualties. It's more to make the soldiers, the French here, duck down and not shoot against Royce's corps or division, right? So they can just advance under no fire, right? So it's covering fire. Obviously, this is also going to get a lot of casualties on the French side, right? This is going to be brutal.
But its guns cause havoc among French troops holding the Pontari. Under this covering fire, Royce's 5th column charges up the narrow road and in fierce fighting storms the French entrenchments.
Wow, just like that.
This advance threatens the entire French right wing with encirclement.
What is Napoleon gonna do?
Begins. Moments later, gunfire to the southwest reveals Lusignan's 1st column has reached Affy.
Wow.
Poised to cut off their escape.
I mean, look at this. Napoleon is basically surrounded. He is keeping a bay on this southwestern flank here, right? But his supply lines and his communication line and his escape route is almost cut off. And he's almost encircled. What is he gonna do? Look at this. Alvinci has basically won, maybe in his mind, right? But they have fought for a long time. Specifically in the center, right?
The French situation is desperate. They are outnumbered, surrounded, and under heavy attack.
Yep.
Napoleon's staff look anxiously to their commander.
Makes sense.
Wondering what miracle can save the army now.
All turned towards General Bonaparte, but after a short inspection, he limited himself to say calmly, "They are ours." Wow. Okay.
Sensing victory, General Alvinci and his staff ride forward to urge his infantry on. Napoleon remains calm.
Okay.
He knows Alvinci's center columns are near exhaustion, and that they have no cavalry and little artillery support. He identifies Royce's column as the most immediate threat.
That makes sense.
Orders Joubert to send every man and gun he can spare for a counterattack.
Wow.
General Leclerc and a 21-year-old Captain Lassalle then charge with the entire French cavalry.
Wow.
Just a few hundred horsemen.
Just a few hundred.
Under this onslaught, the lead Austrian troops are driven back into the gorge.
Yeah, I mean, they're encircled. They're stuck. They can't use their numbers.
They collide with the rest of the column coming up. Cavalry...
Wait, just look at this map. Look. You can see on the right side. On the other side of the Adige River, right? All the way to the right side. You can see where they could put their guns and shoot towards where the mountain is, right? Look at this. And you can see... Yeah, Napoleon just pours every man, cannon, and horse in there. And what is Royce gonna do? He's almost encircled, right? And he can't use his numbers because he hasn't developed his forces, right?
And infantry jammed together.
Wow.
Some pushing forward, others trying to escape.
Yep.
Joubert's men pour fire down on them from the overlooking ridge.
Wow.
The final straw is the devastating explosion of an ammunition wagon.
Wow. Yeah, you have to retreat after that.
Austrian morale breaks.
Yep.
The survivors flood back down the road to safety.
Wow.
Napoleon now turns his full attention to the center.
I mean, imagine being on the other side of the river and you just watching that happen. You're watching Royce push forward and then just have to retreat back.
The exhausted
and you can't do anything.
columns have become spread out and disordered.
Uh-oh, here comes cavalry.
The sudden
Uh-oh.
appearance of French cavalry, supported by infantry and guns, sparks panic and a mass rout.
Is it just me, or does this battle, specifically in this position when Royce was coming up, it sort of looks like Waterloo? Royce is sort of the Prussians, but Napoleon maybe could have won Waterloo if there was sort of a funnel where you could have less men protecting his flank like that, right? And the center is fighting, right? Wow, it looks like a reverse Waterloo, but okay.
Alvinci, who must have thought himself on the cusp of victory
Wow.
moments before, must join in an undignified race to the rear,
Yep,
spreading further alarm among his men.
yep.
By 1 p.m., the bulk of the Austrian army is in headlong retreat,
But what about the people in the
leaving
south?
Lusignan's
Uh-oh.
first column in an awkward position.
Wow.
Completely isolated, he begins a fighting withdrawal. But the arrival of General Ray's brigade in his rear triggers a rout. Fewer than half of his 4,000 men escape.
Fewer than half. And wasn't this guy the guy who had to go at the side of the mountain, right? And then you put him there. Obviously at the time it makes sense because you cut Napoleon off, but Napoleon has more reinforcements coming, right? Luckily for him. Wow. Wow. That was an amazing victory.
Through tenacity, courage, and good fortune, the army of Italy has turned a grim situation into an astonishing triumph.
Yep.
French casualties are modest.
Wow, really?
Austrian losses are devastating.
Yeah. Wow.
Over the next few days, 5,000 more Austrians are captured as they struggle back through the mountain passes.
I mean, that people don't even talk about this. Wow, look at this. Look at this. It's like 10-1. Wow.
Napoleon will not be there to see it. He's received news that Provera has crossed the Adige.
Yeah,
and
sure.
is marching on Mantua.
Uh-oh.
It is a chance for him to strike one more blow against the enemy and to seal the fate of Mantua.
I mean, that makes sense. You are truly the spoiled child of victory. Okay, to Massena, okay. His future long friend.
Leaving Joubert in command at Rivoli, with orders to renew the attack at dawn, Napoleon races south with Massena's division.
Okay.
Provera has no clue of the disaster
no.
that's engulfed Alvinci's army,
Uh-oh.
nor that the wolves now gather for him.
Yep.
He pushes on to Mantua, shadowed by Augereau, who snaps up his rearguard. 2,000 men taken prisoner.
Look at this. No communication, you
With just
can't know.
7,000 left, Provera's only hope is to break through the French siege lines.
This is Wormser all over again. Wow. What was his plan though? Or what was the order that he got? Wow. Maybe give supplies, I don't know. Uh-oh.
First, he tries to attack San Giorgio. Formidable
Look at
French
this.
defenses and a powerful cannonade.
Yeah, look at the cannon.
Stop him cold.
They shoot everywhere. Look at this. Wow.
The
Uh-oh.
next day, he launches a coordinated attack with Wormser, against
Okay.
French forces at La Favorita.
Sure.
But Napoleon has now arrived with Massena's division from the north.
Uh-oh.
Wurmser's weak, starving men are forced back into the citadel,
Yep.
while a determined charge by the 57th Demi Brigade smashes into Provera's flank.
Wow.
With Augereau approaching from the east,
Uh-oh.
Provera faces impossible odds
He has to
and
surrender.
surrenders with his entire force.
Yeah. I mean, that's more honorable than just letting everybody die, I guess. Look at this. Yeah.
Wurmser's last hope of rescue has been crushed.
Wow.
He puts off the inevitable for 2 agonizing weeks, until, with all food exhausted, he finally accepts terms for Mantua's surrender on the 2nd of February.
Wow.
He and an escort will return to Austria. His 16,000 remaining troops become prisoners.
Wow.
Austrian losses in the campaign reach a staggering 44,000 men.
Wow.
After 8 months, the siege of Mantua is over. A victory that will soon be celebrated on the streets of Paris.
Yep.
But it is General Serrurier, not Napoleon, who takes the formal Austrian surrender.
Makes sense.
His commander-in-chief has already departed to take on his next opponent, the Pope.
Yeah. The Pope. Okay. We will have everything that is beautiful in Italy, okay? With the exception of a small number of objects in Turin and Naples. Wow. Yeah, plundering.
From Rome, Pope Pius VI has once more been agitating against the French. And so Napoleon marches south with 9,000 men
Wow.
to explain the new realities of power in Italy. At
Sure.
Faenza, General Victor's division sweeps aside papal forces, and Ancona is taken without a fight.
Okay.
The subsequent Treaty of Tolentino forces the Pope to give up Romagna,
Wow.
as well as 30 million francs and 100 works of art.
Wow.
Belatedly, Napoleon's victories persuade the Directory to back him in force.
Makes sense.
French armies stuck on the Rhine are ordered to send him reinforcements.
Finally.
Their 34-year-old commander, another rising star
Oh,
of the
okay.
French army, is
Bernadotte.
congratulated on his brilliant winter crossing of the Alps. His name is General Jean Bernadotte.
Wow. So cool to seeing all these generals before.
On the 10th of March, with 70,000 confident, seasoned troops under his command, Napoleon goes on the offensive.
Okay.
He sends Joubert to invade the Tyrol, Massena to advance up the Piave Valley, while he leads the bulk of the army on the most direct road to Vienna.
Okay. I mean, the
enemy
Austrians
is
look
and
scattered.
demoralized. Even the appointment of a new commander, the
Okay.
Emperor's own brother, Archduke Charles,
Oh, okay.
fails to restore morale.
Yeah.
Charles is regarded as a military prodigy.
Sure.
He's 2 years younger than Napoleon and has defeated the armies of both General Jourdan and Moreau in
Yeah.
Germany.
That's fair enough.
But he does not have enough troops or time.
Although that's an excuse because Napoleon had almost the exact same thing. But Napoleon's enemy weren't decisive, right? And they weren't fast and quick in their decision makings, right? Well, Napoleon is decisive and Charles is probably also decisive. But Charles just doesn't have time like Napoleon kind of had.
He fights a delaying action at the Tagliamento River,
Makes sense.
but it ends in disaster when Bernadotte surrounds and captures 2,000 Austrians, 10 guns, and 8 standards.
Wow.
The French pursuit continues, with Massena covering Napoleon's northern flank. He arrives at Tarvis in time to block the Austrians' retreat.
Uh-oh.
3 days
Look
fighting,
at that.
the French take another 3,000 prisoners.
Wow.
Napoleon's troops outmarch and outfight the Austrians at every turn. But his situation is more precarious than it seems.
Yep.
The other French armies are only just crossing the Rhine, while his own supply lines are now overextended and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Rather than withdraw, Napoleon continues to advance,
Wow.
while proposing to Archduke Charles that they open peace negotiations. The
Wow.
Austrians accept.
That's Napoleon. He rolls the dice.
2 days later, both sides agree an armistice, and peace talks begin at Leoben. After 5 years of conflict, Napoleon's dazzling advance into Austria has brought the War of the First Coalition to an end.
Look at that painting.
So ends Napoleon's first campaign, almost exactly a year after it began,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
380 miles away on the shores of the Mediterranean.
Wow. Your countrymen will say as they point you out, he belonged to the army of Italy. Wow. He said that a year before, right?
Negotiations at Leoben become the basis for the Treaty of Campo Formio, signed 5 months later.
Okay.
The Austrian Netherlands, roughly modern Belgium, formally passed to France.
Okay.
The Venetian Republic, invaded and systematically looted by Napoleon's troops, is divided between France and Austria.
Okay.
So ends the 1200-year history of the Serene Republic of Venice.
Yep.
The famous horses of St. Mark are among its many treasures dispatched to the Louvre in Paris.
I mean, imagine all the Catholics and Protestants. Because France at this point still represents Antichrist, atheists, right? And they're taking the horses of St. Mark. I mean, that's... yeah. Wow.
To join its rapidly expanding Italian
Look at
collection.
those. Look at those. Amazing.
The French part of Venice joins its other Italian client states
Makes
to
sense.
form a new Cisalpine republic. The author of its constitution, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Wow. Yeah.
It's an illustration of how far the 27-year-old general has come in just a year.
That's true.
Having waged one of the most brilliant military campaigns in history, many would say his best, he now dictates terms to kings and popes, summons new states into being, and nurtures his status as the most celebrated military commander in Europe.
Yep.
He has achieved all this thanks to formidable intelligence, relentless hard work, and inspiring leadership, which he has used to forge a unique bond of trust with his men.
That's true.
He's had luck, too, along the way,
Yep.
and been ably served by a group of brilliant officers, many of whom will be with him for years to come.
Yep.
For Napoleon still has many extraordinary things to achieve. His Italian campaign is just the first chapter
That's true.
in one of the most astonishing lives in history.
Yep. I mean, we're gonna end there. That was amazing. This whole series has been amazing, right? Epic History TV does always a good job here, right? I mean, you saw there, Napoleon is the author of the Constitution, right? You have, again, same when he went to the Pope to talk with him, right? Napoleon is showing that he's not only a great military commander, that is also he's also a good political leader, if you want to say that, right? He can make deals, right? But this was a great rise. You saw Napoleon rise, and not rise alone, because he has to have under commanders that are also competent, at least under his command, right? Or alone as well, some of them. I think the next thing I'm going to do with Epic History TV is the Marshall series. And maybe do the Battle of Pyramids later, I don't know. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.